Okay, good evening. Getting a little bit of a late start tonight, but I want to finish out Phaedo, and it took me a little bit to find my place. For some reason, it's in PDF format, and it didn't keep my place like it usually does. I'm not sure what's going on there, but anyway, I found the place. I stopped on. I don't even know what these designations mean. There are numbers and letters like headings and or like chapters and subsections or sections and subsections. So we were just finishing up section 84, and it was a good spot to stop at the end of subsection D. So picking up there. Um, so I'll just reread the last sentence. If you are discussing some other subject, I have nothing to say, but if you have some difficulty about this one, do not hesitate to speak for yourselves and expound it if you think the argument could be improved, and if you think you will do better, take me along with you in the discussion. I will tell you the truth, Socrates, said Simmias. Both of us have been in difficulty for some time, and each of us has been arguing the other to question you because we wanted to hear what you would say, but we hesitated to bother you, lest it be displeasing to you in your present misfortune. When Socrates heard this, he laughed quietly and said, Really, Simmias, it would be hard for me to persuade other people that I do not consider my present fate a misfortune if I cannot persuade even you, and you are afraid that it is more difficult to deal with me than before. You seem to think me inferior to the swans in prophecy. They sing before too, but when they realize that they must die, they sing most and most beautifully, as they rejoice that they are about to depart to join the God whose servants they are. But men, because of their own fear of death, tell lies about the swans and say that they lament their death and sing in sorrow. They do not reflect that no bird sings when it is hungry or cold or suffers in any other way, neither the nightingale nor the swallow nor the hoopoe, though they do say that these sing laments when in pain, nor do the swans, but I believe that as they belong to Apollo, they are prophetic, have knowledge of the future, and sing of the blessings of the underworlds, sing and rejoice on that day beyond what they did before. As I believe myself to be a fellow servant with the swans and dedicated to the same God, and have received from my master a gift of prophecy not inferior to theirs, I am no more despondent than they on leaving life. Therefore, you must speak and ask whatever you want as long as the authorities allow it. Well spoken, said Simmias. I will tell you my difficulty, and then Cebes will say why he does not accept what was said. I believe, as perhaps you do, the precise knowledge on that subject is impossible or extremely difficult in our present life, but that it surely shows a very poor spirit not to examine thoroughly what is said about it, and to desist before one is exhausted by an all-around investigation. One should achieve one of these things: learn learn the truth about these things to find it for oneself, or, if that is impossible, adopt the best and most irrefutable of men's theories, and, borne upon this, sail through the dangers of life as upon a raft, unless someone should make that journey safer and less risky upon a firmer vessel of some divine doctrine. So even now, since you have said what you did, I will feel no shame at asking questions, and I will not blame myself in the future because I did not say what I think. As I examine what we said, both by myself and with Cebes, it does not seem to be adequate. Said Socrates, You may well be right, my friend, but tell me, how is it inadequate? In this way, it seems to me, he said. One might make the same argument about harmony, lyre and strings, that a harmony is something invisible, without body, beautiful and divine in the attuned lyre, whereas the lyre itself and its strings are physical, bodily, composite, earthy, and akin to what is mortal. Then if someone breaks the lyre, cuts or breaks the strings, and then insists, using the same argument as you, that the harmony must still exist and is not destroyed because it would be impossible for the lyre and the strings, which are mortal, still to exist when the strings are broken, and for the harmony which is akin and of the same nature as the divine and immortal to be destroyed before that which is mortal. He would say that the harmony itself still must exist, and that the wood and the strings must rot before the harmony can suffer. And indeed, Socrates, I think you must have this in mind, that we really do suppose the soul to be something of this kind, as the body is stretched and held together by the hot and the cold, the dry and the moist, and other such things, and our soul is a mixture and harmony of those things, when they are mixed with each other rightly and in due measure. If, then, the soul is a kind of harmony or attunement, clearly, when our body is relaxed or stretched without due measure by diseases and other evils, the soul must immediately be destroyed, even if it be most divine, as are the other harmonies found in music and all the works of artists, and the remains of each body last for a long time until they rot or are burned. Consider what we shall say in answer to one who deems the soul to be a mixture of bodily elements, and to be the first to perish in the process we call death. Socrates looked at us keenly, as was his habit, smiled, and said, "What Simmias says is quite fair. If one of you is more resourceful than I am, why did he not answer him? For he seems to have handled the argument competently. However, I think that before we answer him, we should hear Cebes's objection, in order that we may have time to deliberate on an answer. When we have heard him, we should either agree with them, or if we think them in tune with us, or, if not, defend our own argument. Come then, Cebes, what is troubling you?" "I tell you," said Cebes, "the argument seems to me to be at the same point as before, and open to the same objection. I do not deny that it has been very elegantly, and, if it is not offensive to say so, sufficiently proved that our soul exists before it took on this present form, but I do not believe the same applies to its existing somewhere after our death. Not that I agree with Simmias's objection that the soul is not stronger and much more lasting than the body, for I think it is superior in all these respects. Why, then, the argument might say, are you still unconvinced? Since you see that when the man dies, the weaker part continues to exist, do you not think that the more lasting part must be preserved during that time? On this point, consider whether what I say makes sense. Like Simmias, I too need an image, for I think this argument is much as if one said at the death of an old weaver that the man had not perished but was safe and sound somewhere, and offered as proof the fact that the cloak the old man had woven himself and was wearing was still sound and had not perished. If one was not convinced, he would be asked whether a man lasts longer than a cloak, which is in use and being worn, and if the answer was that a man lasts much longer, this would be taken as proof that the man was definitely safe and sound, since the more temporary thing had not perished. But Simmias, I do not think that is so, for consider what I say. Anybody could see that the man who said this was talking nonsense. Ooh, I don't know if we're in an ad or not. It, yeah, there we go. I saw it coming. So yeah, we're in an ad. So I'll have a couple of sips while I wait. And I'll pick up right there. Right there. Yeah. And there we go. I think. I'm not sure. One OBS says we're still in an ad, but I'm back. Whatever. Okay, we're gonna keep on. So, um, anybody could see that the man who said this was talking nonsense. That That weaver had woven and worn out many such cloaks. He perished after many of them, but before the last. That does not mean that a man is inferior and weaker than a cloak. The image illustrates, I think, the relationship of the soul to the body, and anyone who says the same thing about them would appear to me to be talking sense. That the soul lasts a long time while the body is weaker and more short-lived. He might say that each soul wears out many bodies, especially if it lives many years. If the body were in a state of flux and perished while the man was still alive, and the soul wove afresh the body that is worn out, yet it would be inevitable that whenever the soul perished, it would be wearing the last body it wove, and perish only before this last. Then, when the soul perished, the body would show the weakness of its nature by soon decaying and disappearing. So we cannot trust this argument and be confident that our soul continues to exist somewhere after our death. For if one were to concede even more than you do to a man using that argument, if one were to grant him not only that the soul exists in the time before we are born, but that there is no reason why the soul of some should not exist and continue to exist after our death, and thus frequently be born and die in turn, if one were to grant him that the soul's nature is so strong that it can survive many bodies, but if, having granted all this, one does not further agree that the soul is not damaged by its many births, and is not in the end altogether destroyed in one of those deaths, he might say that no one knows which death and dissolution of the body brings about the destruction of the soul, since not one of us can be aware of this. And in that case, any man who faces death with confidence is foolish, unless he can prove that the soul is altogether immortal. If he cannot, a man about to die must of necessity always fear for his soul, lest the present separation of the soul from the body bring about the complete destruction of the soul. When we heard what they said, we were all depressed, as we told each other afterwards. We had been quite convinced by the previous argument, and they seemed to confuse us again, and to drive us to doubt not only what had already been said, but also what was going to be said, lest we be worthless as critics, or the subject itself admitted of no certainty. Echecrates. By the gods, Phaedo, you have my sympathy, for as I listen to you now, I find myself saying to myself, what argument shall we trust now that of Socrates, which was extremely convincing, has fallen into discredit? The statement that the soul is some kind of harmony has a remarkable hold on me, now and always, and when it was mentioned, it reminded me that I had myself previously thought so, and now I am again quite in need, as if from the beginning, of some other argument to convince me that the soul does not die along with the man. Tell me then, by Zeus, how Socrates tackled the argument. Was he obviously distressed, as you say you people were, or was he not, but quietly came to the rescue of his argument, and did he do so satisfactorily or inadequately? Tell us everything as precisely as you can. Phaedo. I have certainly often admired Echecrates, but never more than on this occasion. That he had a reply was perhaps not strange. What I wondered at most in him was the pleasant, kind, and admiring way he received the young men's argument, and how sharply he was aware of the effect the discussion had on us, and then how well he healed our distress, and as it were recalled us from our flight and defeat, and turned us around to join him in the examination of their argument. Echecrates. How did he do this? Phaedo. I will tell you. I happened to be sitting on his right by the couch on a low stool, so that he was sitting well above me. He stroked my head and pressed the hair on the back of my neck, for he was in the habit of playing with my hair at times. Tomorrow, Phaedo, he said, you will probably cut this beautiful hair. Likely enough, Socrates, I said. Not if you take my advice, he said. Why not? Said I. It is today, he said, that I shall cut my hair and you yours, if our argument dies on us, and we cannot revive it. If I were you, and the argument escaped me, I would take an oath, as the Argives did, not to let my hair grow before I fought again and defeated the argument of Simmias and Cebes. But, I said, they say that not even Heracles could fight two people. Then call on me as your Iolaus, as long as the daylight lasts. I shall call on you, but in this case, as Iolaus calling on Heracles. It makes no difference, he said, but first there is a certain experience we must be careful to avoid. What is that? I asked. That we should not become misologues, as people become misanthropes. There is no greater evil one can suffer than to hate reasonable discourse. Misology and misanthropy arise in the same way. Misanthropy comes when a man without knowledge or skill has placed great trust in someone and believes him to be altogether truthful, sound, and trustworthy. Then, a short time afterwards, he finds him to be wicked and unreliable. And then this and then this happens in another case when one has frequently had that experience, especially with those whom one believed to be one's closest friends. Then in the end, after many such blows, one comes to hate all men and to believe that no one is sound in any way at all. Have you not seen this happen? I surely have, I said. This is a shameful state of affairs, he said, and obviously due to an attempt to have human relations without any skill in human affairs. For such skill would lead one to believe what is in fact true, that the very good and the very wicked are both quite rare, and that most men are between these extremes. How do you mean? I said. The same as with the very tall and the very short, he said. Do you think anything is rarer than to find an extremely tall man or an extremely short one, or a dog or anything else whatever? Or again, one extremely swift or extremely slow, ugly or beautiful, white or black? Are you not aware that in all those cases the most extreme at either end are rare and few, but those in between are many and plentiful? Certainly, I said. Therefore, he said, if a contest of wickedness were established, there too the winners, you think, would be very few? That is likely, said I. Likely indeed, he said, but arguments are not like men in this particular. I was merely following your lead just now. The similarity lies rather in this. It is as when one who lacks skill in arguments puts his trust in an argument as being true, then shortly afterwards believes it to be false, as sometimes it is and sometimes it is not. And so with another argument and then another. You know how those in particular who spend their time studying contradiction in the end believe themselves to have become very wise, and that they alone have understood that there is no soundness or reliability in any object or in any argument, but that all that exists simply fluctuates up and down as if it were in the Euripus, and does not remain in the same place for any time at all. There's a note. What is the Euripus? The Euripus is the straits between the island of Euboea and Boeotia on the Greek mainland. Its currents were both violent and reliable and variable. Man, I can't read tonight. Okay, so back to where we were. What you say, I said, is certainly true. It would be pitiable, Phaedo, he said, when there is a true and reliable argument, and one that can be understood, if a man who has dealt with such arguments as appear at one time true and at another time untrue, should not blame himself or his own lack of skill, but because of his distress, in the end gladly shift the blame away from himself to the arguments, and spend the rest of his life hating and reviling reasoned discussion, and so be deprived of truth and knowledge of reality. Yes, by Zeus, I said, that would be pitiable indeed. This, then, is the first thing we should guard against, he said. We should not allow into our minds the conviction that argumentation has nothing sound about it, Much rather we should believe that it is we who are not yet sound, and that we must take courage and be eager to attain soundness, you and the others for the sake of your whole life still to come, and I for the sake of death itself. I am in danger at this moment of not having a philosophical attitude about this, but like those who are quite uneducated, I am eager to get the better of you in argument. For the uneducated, when they engage in argument about anything, give no thought to the truth about the subject of discussion, but are only eager that those present will accept the position they have set forth. I differ from them only to this extent. I shall not be eager to get the agreement of those present that what I say is true, except incidentally, but I shall be very eager that I should myself be thoroughly convinced that things are so. For I am thinking, see in how contentious a spirit, that if what I say is true, it is a fine thing to be convinced. If, on the other hand, nothing exists after death, at least for this time before I die, I shall distress those present less with lamentations, and my folly will not continue to exist along with me. That would be a bad thing, but will come to an end in a short time. Thus prepared, Simmias and Cebes, he said, I come to deal with your argument. If you will take my advice, you will give but little thought to Socrates, but much more to the truth. If you think that what I say is true, agree with me. If not, oppose it with every argument, and take care that in my eagerness I do not deceive myself and you, and like a bee leave my sting in you when I go. We must proceed, he said, and first remind me of what you said if I do not appear to remember it. Simmias, as I believe, is in doubt and fear that the soul, though it is more divine and beautiful than the body, yet predeceases it, being a kind of harmony. Cebes, I thought, agrees with me that the soul lasts much longer than the body, but that no one knows whether the soul often wears out many bodies and then, on leaving its last body, is now itself destroyed. This then is death, the destruction of the soul, since the body is always being destroyed. Are these the questions, Simmias and Cebes, which we must investigate? They both agreed that they were. Do you then, he asked, reject all our previous statements, or some but not others? Some, they both said, but not others. What, he said, about the statements we made that learning is recollection, and that if this was so, our soul must of necessity exist elsewhere before us, before it was imprisoned in the body? For myself, said Cebes, I was wonderfully convinced by it at the time, and I stand by it now also more than by any other statement. That, said Simmias, is also my position, and I should be very surprised if I ever changed my opinion about this. But you must change your opinion, my Theban friend, said Socrates, if you still believe that a harmony is a composite thing, and that the soul is a kind of harmony of the elements of the body in a state of tension. For surely you will not allow yourself to maintain that a composite harmony existed before those elements from which it had to be composed, or would you? Never, Socrates, he said. Do you realize, he said, that this is what you are in fact saying when you state that the soul exists before it takes on the form and body of a man, and that it is composed of elements which do not yet exist? A harmony is not like that to which you compare it. The lyre and the strings and the notes, though still unharmonized, exist. The harmony is composed last of all, and is the first to be destroyed. How will you harmonize this statement with your former one? In no way, said Simmias. And surely, he said, a statement about harmony should do so more than any other. It should, said Simmias. So your statement is inconsistent? Consider which of your statements you prefer, that learning is recollection, or that the soul is a harmony. I much prefer the former, Socrates. I adopted the latter without proof, because of a certain probability and plausibility, which is why it appeals to most men. I know that arguments of which the proof is based on probability are pretentious, and if one does not guard against them, they certainly deceive one. in geometry and everything else. The theory of recollection and learning, however, was based on an assumption worthy of acceptance, for our soul was said to exist also before it came into the body, just as the reality does that is of the kind that we qualify by the words what it is, and I convinced myself that I was quite correct to accept it. Therefore, I cannot accept the theory that the soul is a harmony either from myself or anyone else. What of this, Simmias? Do you think it's natural for a harmony or any other composite to be in a different state from that of the elements of which it is composed? Not at all, said Simmias. Nor as I think, can it act or be acted upon in a different way than in its elements? He agreed. One must therefore One must therefore suppose that a harmony does not direct its components, but is directed by them. He accepted this. A harmony is therefore far from making a movement or uttering a sound or doing anything else in a manner contrary to that of its parts. Far from it indeed, he said. Does not the nature of each harmony depend on the way it has been harmonized? I do not understand, he said. Will it not, if it is more and more fully harmonized, be more and more fully a harmony? And if it is less and less fully harmonized, it will be less and less fully a harmony? Certainly. Can this be true about the soul, that one soul is more and more fully a soul than another, or is less and less fully a soul, even to the smallest extent? Not in any way. Come now, by Zeus, he said. One soul is said to have intelligence and virtue, and to be good, another to have folly and wickedness, and to be bad. Are those things truly said? They certainly are. What will someone who holds the theory that the soul is a harmony say that those things are which reside in the soul, that is, virtue and wickedness? Are these some other harmony and disharmony? That the good soul is harmonized, and being a harmony has within itself another harmony, whereas the evil soul is both itself a lack of harmony and has no other within itself? I don't know what to say, said Simmias, but one who holds that assumption must obviously say something of that kind. We have previously agreed, he said, that one soul is not more and not less a soul than another, and this means that one harmony is not more and more fully, or less and less fully, a harmony than another. Is that not so? Certainly. Now that which is no more and no less a harmony is not more or less harmonized. Is that so? It is. Can that which is neither more nor less harmonized partake more or less of harmony, or does it do so equally? Equally. What if a soul is neither more nor less a soul than another? It has been harmonized to the same extent? This is so. If that is so, I would have no greater it would have no greater share of disharmony or of harmony. It would not. That being the case, could one soul have more wickedness or virtue than another, if wickedness is disharmony and virtue harmony? It could not. But rather, Simmias, according to correct reasoning, no soul, if it is a harmony, will have any share of wickedness, for harmony is surely altogether this very thing, harmony, and would never share in disharmony. It certainly would not. Nor would a soul, being altogether this very thing, a soul, share in wickedness? How could it, in view of what has been said? So it follows from this argument that all the souls of all living creatures will be equally good, if souls are by nature equally this very thing, souls. I think so, Socrates. Does our argument seem right, he said, and does it seem that it should have come to this if the hypothesis that the soul is a harmony was correct? Not in any way, he said. Further, of all the parts of a man, can you mention any other part that rules him than his soul, especially if it is a wise soul? I cannot. Does it do so by following the affections of the body or by opposing them? I mean, for example, that when the body is hot and thirsty, the soul draws him to the opposite, to not drinking. When the body is hungry, to not eating. And we see 1,000 other examples of the soul opposing the affections of the body. Is that not so? It certainly is. On the other hand, we previously agreed that if the soul were a harmony, it would never be out of tune with the stress and relaxation and the strings and the striking of the strings or anything else done to its composing elements, but that it would follow and never direct them. We did so agree, of course. Well, does it now appear to be quite the opposite, ruling over all the elements of which one says it is composed, opposing nearly all of them throughout life, directing all their ways, inflicting harsh and painful punishment on them, at times in physical culture and medicine, at other times more gently by threats and exhortations, holding converse with desires and passions and fears as if it were one thing talking to a different one, as Homer wrote somewhere in the Odyssey, where he says that Odysseus struck his breast and rebuked his heart, saying, "Endure, my heart, you have endured worse than this." Do you think that when he composed this, the poet thought that his soul was a harmony, a thing to be directed by the affections of the body? Did he not rather regard it as ruling over them and mastering them, itself a much more divine thing than a harmony? Yes, by Zeus, I think so, Socrates. Therefore, my good friend, it is quite wrong for us to say that the soul is a harmony, and in saying so we would disagree both with the divine poet Homer and with ourselves. That is so, he said. Very well, said Socrates. Harmonia of Thebes seems somehow reasonably propitious, never known how to pronounce that, to us. How and by what argument, my dear Cebes, can we propitiate Cadmus? I think, Cebes said, that you will find a way. You dealt with the argument about harmony in a manner that was quite astonishing to me. When Simmias was speaking of his difficulties, I was very much wondering whether anyone would be able to deal with his argument, and I was quite dumbfounded when right away you could not resist your argument. He could not resist your argument's first onslaught. I should not wonder, therefore, if that of Cadmus suffered the same fate. My good sir, said Socrates, do not boast, lest some malign influence upset the argument we are about to make. However, we leave that to the care of the god, but let us come to grips with it in the Homeric fashion, to see if there is anything in what you say. The sum of your problem is this. You consider that the soul must be proved to be immortal and indestructible before a philosopher on the point of death, who is confident that he will fare much better in the underworld than if he had led any other kind of life, can avoid being foolish and simple-minded in this confidence. To prove that the soul is strong, that it is divine, that it existed before we were born as men, all this, you say, does not show the soul to be immortal, but only long-lasting, that it existed for a long time before, that it knew much and acted much, makes it no more immortal because of that. Indeed, its very entering into a human body was the beginning of its destruction, like a disease. It would live that life in distress and would in the end be destroyed in what we call death. You say it makes no difference whether it enters a body once or many times, as far as the fear of each of us is concerned, for it is natural for a man who is no fool to be afraid if he does not. Whoa, 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 what is that? If he does not know and cannot prove that the soul is immortal. This, I think, is what you maintain, Cebes. I deliberately repeat it often in order that no point may escape us, and that you may add or subtract something if you wish. And Cebes said, there is nothing that I want to add or subtract at the moment. That is what I say. Socrates paused for a long time, deep in thought. He then said, this is no unimportant problem that you raise, Cebes, for it requires a thorough investigation of the cause of generation and destruction. I will, if you wish, give you an account of my experience in these matters. Then, if something I say seems useful to you, make use of it, to persuade us of your position. I surely do wish that, said Cebes. Listen, then, and I will, Cebes, he said. When I was a young man, I was wonderfully keen on that wisdom which they call natural science, for I thought it splendid to know the causes of everything, why it comes to be, why it perishes, and why it exists. I was often changing my mind in the investigation, in the first instance, of questions such as these. Are living creatures nurtured when heat and cold produce a kind of putrefaction, as some say? Do we think with our blood, or air, or fire, or none of these? And does the brain provide our senses of hearing and sight and smell, from which some memory and opinion, and from memory and opinion which has become stable, comes knowledge? Then again, as I investigated how these things perish and what happens to things in the sky and on the earth, finally I became convinced that I have no natural aptitude at all for that kind of investigation, and of this I will give you sufficient proof. This investigation made me quite blind even to those things which I and others thought that I clearly knew before, so that I unlearned what I thought I knew before about many other things, and specifically about how men grew. I thought before that it was obvious to anybody that men grew through eating and drinking, for food adds flesh to flesh and bones to bones, and in the same way appropriate parts were added to all other parts of the body, so that the man grew from an earlier small bulk to a large bulk later, and so a small man became big. That is what I thought then. Do you not think it was reasonable? I do, said Siebes. Then further consider this. I thought my opinion was satisfactory, that when a large man stood by a small one, he was taller by a head, and so a horse was taller than a horse. Even clearer than this, I thought that 10 was more than 8, because 2 had been added, and that a 2-cubit length is larger than a cubit because it surpasses itself by half its length. And what do you think now about those things? That I am that I am far, by Zeus, from believing that I know the cause of any of those things. I will not even allow myself to say that where one is added to one, either the one to which it is added or the one that is added becomes two, or that the one added and the one to which it is added becomes two because of the addition of the one to the other. I wonder that when each of them is separate from the other, each of them is one, nor are they then two, but that when they come near to one another, this is the cause of their becoming two, the coming together and being placed closer to one another. Nor can I any longer be persuaded that when one thing is divided, this division is the cause of its becoming two, for just now the cause of becoming two was the opposite. At that time, it was their coming close together, and one was added to the other, but now it is because one is taken and separated from the other. I do not any longer persuade myself that I know why a unit or anything else comes to be, or perishes, or exists by the old method of investigation, and I do not accept it, but I have a confused method of my own. One day I heard someone reading, as he said, from a book of Anaxagoras, and saying that it is mind that directs and is the cause of everything. I was delighted with this cause, and it seemed to me good, in a way, that mind should be the cause of all. I thought that if this were so, the directing mind would direct everything and arrange each thing in a way that was best. If then one wished to know the cause of each thing, why it comes to be, or perishes, or exists, one had to find what was the best way for it to be, or to be acted upon, or to act. On these premises, then it befitted a man to investigate only about this and other things, what is best. The same man must inevitably also know what is worse, for that is part of the same knowledge. As I reflected on this subject, I was glad to think that I had found in Anaxagoras a teacher about the cause of things after my own heart, and that he would tell me first whether the earth is flat or round, and then would explain why it is so of necessity, saying which is better, and that it was better to be so. If he said it was in the middle of the universe, he would go on to show that it was better for it to be in the middle, and if he showed me those things, I should be prepared never to desire any other kind of cause. I was ready to find out in the same way about the sun and the moon and other heavenly bodies, about their relative speed, their turnings, and whatever else happened to them, how it is best that each should act or be acted upon. I never thought that Anaxagoras, who said that those things were directed by mind, would bring in any other cause for them than that it was best for them to be as they are. Once he had given the best for each as the cause for each, and the general cause of all, I thought he would go on to explain the common good for all, and I would not have exchanged my hopes for a fortune. I eagerly acquired his books and read them as quickly as I could, in order to know the best and the worst as soon as possible. This wonderful hope was dashed as I went on reading and saw that the man made no use of mind, nor gave it any responsibility for the management of things, but mentioned as causes air and ether and water and many other strange things. That seemed to me much like saying that Socrates' actions are all due to his mind, and then, in trying to tell the causes of everything I do, to say that the reason that I am sitting here is because my body consists of bones and sinews, because the bones are hard and are separated by joints, and that the sinews are such as to contract and relax, that they surround the bones along with flesh and skin which hold them together. Then, as the bones are hanging in their sockets, the relaxation and contraction of the sinews enable me to bend my limbs, and that is the cause of my sitting here with my limbs bent. Okay. Again, he would mention other such causes for my talking to you, sounds and air and hearing, and 1,000 other such things, but he would neglect to mention the true causes, that after the Athenians decided it was better to condemn me, for this reason it seemed best to me to sit here, and more right to remain, and to endure whatever penalty they ordered. For, by the dog, I think these sinews and bones could long ago have been in Megara, or among the Boeotians, taken there by my belief as to the best course, if I had not thought it more right and honorable to endure whatever penalty the city ordered, rather than escape and run away. To call those things causes is too absurd. If someone said that without bones and sinews and all such things I should not be able to do what I decided, he would be right, but surely to say that they are the cause of what I do, and not that I have chosen the best course, even though I act with my mind, is to speak very lazily and carelessly. Imagine not being able to distinguish the real cause from that without which the cause would not be able to act as a cause. It is what the majority appear to do, like the people groping in the dark. They call it a cause, thus giving it a name that does not belong to it. That is why one man surrounds the earth with a vortex to make the heavens keep it in place. Another makes the air support it like a wide lid. As for their capacity of being in the best place they could possibly be put, this they do not look for, nor do they believe it to have any divine force, but they believe that they will sometime discover a stronger and more immortal Atlas to hold everything together more, and they do not believe that the truly good and binding binds and holds them together. I would gladly become the disciple of any man who taught the workings of that kind of cause. However, since I was deprived and could neither discover it myself nor learn it from another, do you wish me to give you an explanation of how, as a second best, I busied myself with the search for the cause, Cebes? I would wish it above all else, he said. I don't know how much more we've got of this. Um, Actually, I'm going to find out. So bear with me. We're on page 137. Okay, so we've got about 17 pages to go. Okay. After this, he said, when I have wearied of investigating things, I thought that I must be careful to avoid the experience of those who watch an eclipse of the sun, for some of them ruin their eyes unless they watch its reflection in water or some such material. A similar thought crossed my mind, and I feared that my soul would be altogether blinded if I looked at things with my eyes and tried to grasp them with each of my senses. So I thought I must take refuge in discussions and investigate the truth of things by means of words. However, perhaps this analogy is inadequate, for I certainly do not admit that one who investigates things by means of words is dealing with images any more than one who looks at facts. However, I started in this matter, taking as my hypothesis in each case the theory that seemed to me the most compelling. I would consider as true about cause and everything else, whatever agreed with this, and as untrue whatever did not so agree. But I want to put my meaning more clearly, for I do not think that you understand me now. No, by Zeus, said Cebes, not very well. This, he said, is what I mean. It is nothing new, but what I have never stopped talking about, both elsewhere and in the earlier part of our conversation. I'm going to try to show you the kind of cause with which I have concerned myself. I turned back to those oft mentioned things and proceeded from them. I assumed the existence of a beautiful its itself by itself, of a good and a great and all the rest. If you grant me these and agree that they exist, I hope to show you the cause as a result, and to find the soul to be immortal. Take it that I grant you this, said Cebes, and hasten to your conclusion. Get on with it, old man. Consider then, he said, whether you share my opinion as to what follows, for I think that if there is anything beautiful besides the beautiful itself, it is beautiful for no other reason than that it shares in that beautiful, and I say so with everything. Do you agree that this sort of cause? I do. I no longer understand or recognize those other sophisticated causes, and if someone tells me that a thing is beautiful because it has a bright color or shape or any such thing, I ignore these other reasons, for all these confuse me. But I simply, naively, and perhaps foolishly cling to this, that nothing else makes it beautiful other than the presence of, or the sharing in, or however you may describe its relationship to that beautiful we mentioned. For I will not insist on the precise nature of the relationship, but that all beautiful things are beautiful by the beautiful. That, I think, is the safest answer I can give myself or anyone else. And if I stick to this, I think I shall never fall into error. This is the safe answer for me or anyone else to give, namely, that it is through beauty that beautiful things are made beautiful. Or do you not think so too? I do. And that it is through bigness that big things are big, and that the bigger are bigger, and that the smaller things are made small by smallness? Yes. And you would not accept that the statement that one man is taller than than another by a head, and the shorter man shorter by the same, but you would bear witness that you mean nothing else than that everything that is bigger is made bigger by nothing else than by bigness, and that is the cause of its being bigger, and the smaller is made smaller only by the smallness, and that is why it is smaller. I think you would be afraid that some opposite argument would confront you if you said that someone is bigger or smaller by a head, first because the bigger is bigger, and the smaller smaller by the same. then because the bigger is bigger by a head which is small, and this would be strange, namely that someone is made bigger by something small. Would you not be afraid of this? I certainly would, said Sebes, laughing. Then you would be afraid to say that 10 is more numerous than 8 by 2, and that this is the cause of the excess, and not numerousness, and because of numerousness, or that 2 cubits is bigger than 1 cubit by half, and not by bigness, for this is the same fear. Certainly. Then would you not avoid saying that when 1 is added to 1, it is the addition, and when it is divided, it is the division that is the cause of 2? And you would loudly exclaim that you do not know how else each thing can come to be except by sharing in the particular reality in which it shares. And in these cases, you do not know of any other cause of becoming 2 except by sharing in 2ness, and that the things that are to be 2 must share in this, as that which is to be 1 must share in oneness, and you would dismiss these additions and divisions and other such subtleties, and leave them to those wiser than yourself to answer. But you, afraid as they say, of your own shadow and your inexperience, would cling to the safety of your own hypothesis and give that answer. If someone then attacked your hypothesis itself, you would ignore him and would not answer until you had examined whether the consequences that follow from it agree with one another or contradict one another. And when you must give an account of your hypothesis itself, you will proceed in the same way. You will assume another hypothesis, the one which seems to you best of the higher ones, until you come to something acceptable. But you will not jumble the two as the debaters do by discussing the hypothesis and its consequences at the same time, if you wish to discover any truth. This they do not discuss at all, nor give any thought to, but their wisdom enables them to mix everything up and yet be pleased with themselves. But if you are a philosopher, I think you will do so, will do as I say. What you say is very true, said Simmias and Cebes together. Echecrates. Yes, by Zeus, Phaedo. They were right. I think he made these things wonderfully clear to anyone of even small intelligence. Phaedo. Yes, indeed, Echecrates. And all those present thought so too. Echecrates. And so do we who were not present, but hear of it now. What was said after that? Phaedo. As I recall it, when the above had been accepted, and it was agreed that each of the forms existed, and that other things acquired their name by having a share in them, he followed this up by asking, if you say these things are so, then when you then say that Simmias is taller than Socrates, but shorter than Phaedo, do you not mean that there is in Simmias both tallness and shortness? I do. But he said, do you agree that the words of the statement Simmias is taller than Socrates do not express the truth of the matter? It is not surely the nature of Simmias to be taller than Socrates, because he is Simmias, but because of the tallness he happens to have. Nor is he taller than Socrates because Socrates is Socrates, but because Socrates has smallness compared with the tallness of the other? True. Nor is he shorter than Phaedo, because Phaedo is Phaedo, but because Phaedo has tallness compared with the shortness of Simmias? That is so. So then, Simmias is called both short and tall, being between the two, presenting his shortness to be overcome by the tallness of one, and his tallness to overcome the shortness of the other. He similarly added, I seem to be going to talk like a book, but it is, as I say, the other. What? He seemingly added, he smilingly added, that makes a little more sense. He smilingly added, I seem to be going to talk like a book, but it is as I say. The other agreed. My purpose is that you may agree with me. Now it seems to me that not only tallness itself is never willing to be tall and short at the same time, but also that the tallness is in us will never admit the short or be overcome, but one of two things happens. Either it flees and retreats whenever its opposite the short approaches, or it is destroyed by its approach. It is not willing to endure and admit shortness and be other than it was. Whereas I admit and endure shortness and still remain the same person and am this short man. But tallness being tall cannot venture to be small. In the same way, the short in us is unwilling to become or to be tall ever, nor does any other of the opposites become or be its opposite while still being what it was. Either it goes away or is destroyed when that happens. I altogether agree, said Sebes. When he heard this, someone of those present, I have no clear memory of who it was, said, by the gods, did we not agree earlier in our discussion to the very opposite of what is now being said, namely, that the larger came from the smaller and the smaller from the larger, and that this simply was how opposites came to be from their opposites? But now I think we are saying that this would never happen. On hearing this, Socrates inclined his head towards the speaker and said, you have bravely reminded us, but you do not understand the difference between what is said now and what was said then, which was that an opposite thing came from an opposite thing. Now we say that the opposite itself could never become opposite to itself, neither that in us nor that in nature. Then, my friend, we are talking of things that have opposite qualities and naming these after them. But now we say that these opposites themselves, from the presence of which in them things get their name, never can tolerate the coming to be from one another. At the same time, he looked to Sebes and said, does anything of what this man says also disturb you? Okay. Not at the moment, said Sebes, but I do not deny that many things do disturb me. We are altogether agreed then, he said, that an opposite will never be opposite to itself. Entirely agreed. Consider then whether you will agree to this further point. There is something you call hot and something you call cold. There is. Are they the same as what you call snow and fire? By Zeus, no. So the hot is something other than fire, and the cold is something other than snow? Yes. I believe, that being snow, it will not admit the hot, as we said before, and remain what it was, and be both snow and hot. But when the hot approaches, it will either retreat before it or be destroyed. Quite so. So fire, as the cold approaches, will either go away or be destroyed. It will never venture to admit coldness and remain what it was, fire and cold. What you say is true. It is true, then, about some of these things, that not only the form itself deserves its own name for all time, but there is something else that is not the form, but has its character whenever it exists. Perhaps I can make my meaning clearer. The odd must always be given this name we now mention. Is that not so? Certainly. Is it the same? I'm sorry. Is it the only one of existing things to be called odd? This is my question. Or is there something else than the odd which one must nevertheless also always call odd, as well as by its own name, because it is such by nature as never to be separated from the odd? I mean, for example, the number 3 and many others. Consider 3. Do you not think that it must always be called both by its own name and by that of the odd, which is not the same as 3? That is the nature of 3 and of 5 and of half of all the numbers. Each of them is odd, but it is not the odd. Then again, 2 and 4 and the whole other column of numbers, each of them, while not being the same as the even, is always even. Do you not agree? Of course. Look now. What I want to make clear is this. Not only do those opposites not admit each other, but this is also true of those things which, while not being opposite to each other, yet always contain the opposites. And it seems that these do not admit that form which is opposite to that which is in them. When it approaches them, they either perish or give way. Shall we not say that three will perish or undergo anything before, while remaining three, becoming even? Certainly, said Cebes. Yet surely two is not the opposite of three. Indeed, it is not. It is then not only opposite forms that do not admit each other's approach, but also some other things that do not admit the onset of opposites. Very true. Do you then want us, if we can, to define what these are? I surely do. Would they be the things that compel whatever they occupy not only to contain their form, but also always that of some opposite? How do you mean? As we were saying just now, you surely know that what the form of three occupies must be not only three, but also odd. Certainly. And we say that the opposite form to the form that achieves this result could never come to it. It could not. Now it is oddness that has done this? Yes. And opposite to this is the form of the even? Yes. So when the form of the even So then the form of the even will never come to three? Never. Then three has no share in the even? Never. So three is uneven? Yes. As for what I said, we must define, that is, what kind of things, while not being opposites to something, yet do not admit the opposite, as, for example, the triad, though it is not the opposite of the even, yet does not admit it because it always brings along the opposite of the even. And so the dyad, the triad, and so the dyad in relation to the odd, fire to the cold, and very many other things, see whether you would define it thus. Not only does the opposite not admit its opposite, but that which brings along some opposite into that which it occupies, that which brings this along while not will not admit the opposite to that which it brings along. Refresh your memory. It is no worse for being heard often. 5 does not admit the form of the even, nor will 10, its double, admit the form of the odd. The double itself is an opposite of something else, yet it will not admit the form of the odd, nor do 1½ and other such fractions admit the form of the whole, nor will 1/3, and so on, if you will follow me and agree to this. I certainly agree, he said, and I follow you. Tell me again from the beginning, he said, and do not answer in the words of the question, but do as I do. I say that beyond that safe answer which I spoke of first, I see another safe answer. If you should ask me what coming into a body makes it hot, my reply would not be that safe and ignorant one that it is heat, but our present argument provides a more sophisticated answer, namely fire. And if you ask me what on coming into a body makes it sick, I will not say sickness but fever, nor if asked the presence of what in a number makes it odd, I will not say oddness but oneness, and so with other things. See if you may sufficiently understand what I mean, what I want. Quite sufficiently. Answer me then, he said, what is it that present in a body makes it living? A soul. And is that always so? Of course. Whatever the soul occupies, it always brings life to it? It does. Is there, or is there not, an opposite to life? There is. What is it? Death. So the soul will never admit the opposite of that which it brings along, as we agree from what has been said. Most certainly, said Cebes. Well, and what do we call that which does not admit the form of the even, the uneven? What do we call that which will not admit the just, and that which will not admit the musical, the unmusical, and the other the unjust? Very well. What do we call that which does not admit death? The deathless, he said. Now the soul does not admit death? No. So the soul is deathless? It is. Very well, he said. Shall we say that this has been proved, do you think? Quite adequately proved, Socrates. It's like we're coming up on another ad. Well now, Cebes, he said, if the uneven were of necessity indestructible, surely three would be indestructible. Of course. And if the non-hot were of necessity indestructible, then whenever anyone brought heat to snow, the snow would retreat safe and unthawed, for it would not be destroyed, nor again could it stand its ground and admit the heat. What you say is true. In the same way, if the non-cold were indestructible, then when some cold attacked the fire, it would neither be quenched nor destroyed, but retreat safely. Necessarily. Must then the same not be said of the deathless? If the deathless is also indestructible, it is impossible for the soul to be destroyed when death comes upon it. For it follows from what has been said that it will not admit death or be dead, just as three, we said, will not be even, nor will the odd. Nor will fire be cold, nor the heat that is in the fire. But someone might say, what prevents the odd will not, while not becoming even, as has been agreed, for being destroyed from being destroyed, and the even to become to come to be instead? We could not maintain against the man who said this that it was not destroyed, for the uneven is not indestructible. If we had agreed that it was indestructible, we could easily have maintained that at the coming of the even, the odd and the three have gone away, and the same would hold for fire and the hot and the other things. Surely. And so now, if we agreed that the deathless is indestructible, the soul, besides being deathless, is indestructible. If not, we need another argument. There is no need for one as far as that goes, for hardly anything could resist destruction if the deathless, which lasts forever, would admit destruction. All would agree, said Socrates, that the god and the form of life itself, and anything that is deathless, are never destroyed. All men would agree, by Zeus, to that, and the gods, I imagine, even more so. If the deathless is indestructible, then the soul, if it is deathless, would also be indestructible? Necessarily. Then when death comes to man, the mortal part of him dies, it seems, but his deathless part goes away safe and indestructible, yielding the place to death. So it appears. Therefore the soul, Cebes, he said, is more certainly deathless and indestructible, and our souls will really dwell in the underworld. I have nothing more to say against that, Socrates, said Cebes, nor can I doubt your arguments. If Simmias here, or someone else, has something to say, he should not remain silent, for I do not know to what further occasion other than the present he could put it off, if he wants to say or to hear anything on these subjects. Certainly, said Simmias. I myself have no remaining grounds for doubt after what has been said. Nevertheless, in view of the importance of our subject and my low opinion of human weakness, I am bound still to have some private misgivings about what we have said. You are not only right to say this, Simmias, Socrates said, but our first hypothesis requires clearer examination, even though we find them convincing. And if you analyze them adequately, you will, I think, follow the argument as far as a man can, and if the conclusion is clear, you will look no further. That is true. It is right to think then, gentlemen, that if the soul is immortal, it requires our care not only for the time we call our life, but for the sake of all time, and that one is in terrible danger if one does not give it that care. Oh, and we are in an ad. It finally caught up. So I will start back at the beginning of that paragraph with "It is right to think then, gentlemen." Um, ooh, man. You know, this is I could read more of this, but I don't think at this current moment, I don't think I want to do much more reading of this kind of stuff um, on stream because I just don't think it's good streaming material, to be totally honest. Okay, so we're supposed to be back. So I'll start back here at paragraph C. It is right to think, then, gentlemen, that if the soul is immortal, it requires our care not only for the time we call our life, but for the sake of all time, and that one is in terrible danger if one does not give it that care. If death were escape from everything, it would be a great boon to the wicked to get rid of the body and of their wickedness together with their soul. But now that the soul appears to be immortal, there is no escape from evil or salvation for it except by becoming as good and wise as possible. For the soul goes to the underworld, possessing nothing but its education and upbringing, which are said to bring the greatest benefit or harm to the dead right at the beginning of the journey yonder. We are told that when each person dies, the guardian spirit who was allotted to him in life proceeds to lead him to a certain place, whence those who have been gathered together there must, after being judged, proceed to the underworld with the guide who has been appointed to lead them thither from here. Having there undergone that what they must and stayed there the appointed time, they are led back here by another guide after long periods of time. The journey is not as Aeschylus's Aeschylus Telephus describes it. He says that only one single path leads to Hades, but I think it is neither one nor simple, for then there would be no need of guides. One could not make any mistake if there were but one path. As it is likely to have many forks and crossroads, and I base this judgment on the sacred rites and customs here. The well-ordered and wise soul follows the guide and is not without familiarity with its surroundings, but the soul that is passionately attached to the body, as I said before, hovers around it and the visible world for a long time, struggling and suffering much until it is led away by force and with difficulty by its appointed spirit. When the impure soul which has performed some impure deed joins the others after being involved in unjust killings or committed other crimes which are akin to these and are actions of souls of this kind, everybody shuns it and turns away, unwilling to be its fellow traveler or its guide. Such a soul wanders alone, completely at a loss, until a certain time arrives and it is forcibly led to its proper dwelling place. On the other hand, the soul that has led a pure and moderate life finds fellow travelers and gods to guide it, and each of them dwells in a place suited to it. There are many strange places upon the earth, and the earth itself is not such as those who are used to discourse upon it believe it to be in nature or size, as someone has convinced me. Simmias said, "What do you mean, Socrates? I have myself heard many things said about the earth, but certainly not the things that convince you. I should be glad to hear them." 8 pages to go. Indeed, Simmias, I do not think it requires the skill of Glaucus, to tell you what they are, but to prove them true requires more than that skill, and I should perhaps not be able to do so. Also, even if I had the knowledge, my remaining time would not be long enough to tell the tale. However, nothing prevents my telling you what I am convinced is the shape of the earth and what its regions are. Even that is sufficient, said Simmias. Well then, he said, the first thing of which I am convinced is that if the earth is a sphere in the middle of the heavens, it has no need of air or any other force to prevent it from falling. The homogeneous nature of the heavens on all sides, and the earth's own equipoise, I don't know what that word is, are sufficient to hold it. For an object balanced in the middle of something homogeneous will have no tendency to incline more in any direction than any other, but will remain unmoved. This, he said, is the first point of which I am persuaded. And rightly so, said Simmias. Further, the earth is very large, and we live around the sea in a small portion of it, between Phasis and the pillars of Heracles, like ants or frogs around a swamp. Many other people's lives in many other people live in many such parts of it. Everywhere about the earth there are numerous hollows of many kinds and shapes and sizes into which the water and the mist and the air have gathered. The earth itself is pure and lies in the pure sky where the stars are situated, which the majority of those who discourse on these subjects call the ether. The water and mist and air are the sediment of the ether, and they always flow into the hollows of the earth. We who dwell in the hollows of it are unaware of this, and we think that we live above, on the surface of the earth. It is as if someone who lived deep down in the middle of the ocean thought he was living on its surface. Seeing the sun and the other heavenly bodies through the water, he would think the sea to be the sky, because he is slow and weak. He has never reached the surface of the sea, or risen with his head above the water, or come out of the sea to our region here, nor seen how much purer and more beautiful it is than his own region, nor has he ever heard of it from anyone who has seen it. Our experience is the same. Living in a certain hollow of the earth, we believe that we live upon its surface, the air we call the heavens, as if the stars made their way through it. This too is the same. Because of our weakness and slowness, we are not able to make our way to the upper limit of the air. If anyone got to this upper limit, if anyone came to it or reached it on wings, and his head rose above it, then just as fish on rising from the sea see things in our region, he would see things there, and if his nature could endure to contemplate them, he would know that there is the true heaven, the true light, and the true earth. For the earth here, these stones and the whole region are spoiled and eaten away, just as things in the sea are by the salt water. Nothing worth mentioning grows in the sea. Nothing, one might say, is fully developed. There are caves and sand and endless slime and mud wherever there is earth, not comparable in any way with the beauties of our region. So those things above are in their turn far superior to the things we know. Indeed, if this is the amount to if this Indeed, if this is the moment to tell a tale, Simmias, it is worth hearing about the nature of things on the surface of the earth under the heavens. At any rate, Socrates, said Simmias, we should be glad to hear this story. Well then, my friend, in the first place, it is said that the earth looked at from above looks like those spherical balls made up of 12 pieces of leather. It is multicolored, and of these colors, those used by our painters give us an indication. Up there, the whole earth has these colors, but much brighter and purer than these. One part is sea green and of marvelous beauty, another is golden, another is white, whiter than chalk or snow. The earth is composed also of the other colors, more numerous and beautiful than any we have seen. The very hollows of the earth, full of water and air, gleaming among the variety of other colors, present a color of their own, so that the whole is seen as a continuum of variegated colors. On the surface of the earth the plants grow with corresponding beauty, the trees and the flowers and the fruits, and so with the hills and the stones, more beautiful in their smoothness and transparency and color. Our precious stones here are but fragments. Our cornelians, jaspers, emeralds, and the rest, all stones there are of that kind and even more beautiful. The reason is that there they are pure, not eaten away or spoiled by decay and brine, or corroded by the water and air which have flowed into the hollows here and bring ugliness and disease upon earth, stones, the other animals and plants. The earth itself is adorned with all these things, and also with gold and silver and other metals. These stand out, being numerous and massive, and occurring everywhere, so that the earth is a sight for the blessed. There are many other living creatures upon the earth, and also men, some living inland, and others at the edge of the air, as we live on the edge of the sea. Others again live on islands surrounded by air close to the mainland. In a word, what water and the sea are to us, the air is to them, and the ether is to them what the air is to us. The climate is such that they are without disease, and they live much longer than people do here. Their eyesight, hearing, and intelligence, and all such, are as superior to ours as air is superior to water, and ether to air in purity. They have groves and temples dedicated to the gods, in which the gods really dwell, and they communicate with them by speech and prophecy and by the sight of them. They see the sun and moon and stars as they are, and in other ways their happiness is in accord with this. This is this then is the nature of the earth as a whole and of its surroundings. Around the whole of it there are many regions in the hollows. Some are deeper and more open than that in which we live. Others are deeper and have a narrower opening than ours, and there are some that have less depth and more width. All these are connected with each other below the surface of the earth in many places by narrow and broader channels, and thus have outlets through which much water flows from one to another as into mixing bowls. Huge rivers of both hot and cold water thus flow beneath the earth eternally. Much fire in large rivers of fire, and many of wet mud, both more pure and more muddy, such as those flowing in advance of the lava and the stream of lava itself in Sicily. These streams then fill up every and all regions as the flow reaches it, each, and all these places move up and down with the oscillating movement of the earth. The natural cause of the oscillation is as follows. One of the hollows of the earth, which is also the biggest, pierces through the whole earth. It is that which Homer mentioned when he said, "Far down where is the deepest pit below the earth," and which he elsewhere and many other poets called Tartarus. Into this chasm all the rivers flow together and again flow out of it, and each river is affected by the nature of the land through which it flows. The reason for their flowing into and out of Tartarus is that this water has no bottom or solid base, but it oscillates up and down in waves, and the air and wind about it do the same, for they follow it when it flows to this or that part of the earth. Just as when people breathe, the flow of air goes in and out, so here the air oscillates with the water and creates terrible winds as it goes in and out. Whenever the water retreats to what we call the lower part of the earth, it flows into those parts and fills them up, as if the water were pumped in. When it leaves that part for this, it fills these parts again, and the parts filled flow through the channels and through the earth, and in each case arrives at the places to which the channels lead, and create seas and marshes and rivers and springs. From there the waters flow upon the earth again, some flowing around larger and more numerous regions, some around smaller and shallower ones, then flow back into Tartarus, some at a point much lower than where they issued forth, others only a little way, but all of them at a lower point, some of them at the opposite side of the chasm, some on the same side, some flow in a wide circle around the earth, once or many times like snakes, and then go as far down as possible, then go back into the chasm of Tartarus. From each side it is possible to flow down as far as the center, but not beyond, for this part that faces the river from either side is steep. There are many other large rivers of all kinds, and among these there are four of note. The biggest, which flows on the outside of the earth in a circle, is called Oceanus. Opposite and flowing in the opposite direction is the Acheron. It flows through many other deserted regions and further underground makes its way to the Acherusian lake, to which the souls of the majority come after death, and after remaining there for a certain appointed time, longer for some, shorter for others, they are sent back to birth as living creatures. The third river issues between the first two, and close to its source it falls into a region burning with much fire, and makes a lake larger than our sea, boiling with water and mud. From there it goes in a circle, foul and muddy, and winding on its way it comes, among other places, to the edge of the Acherusian lake, but does not mingle with its waters. Then, coiling many times underground, it flows lower down into Tartarus. This is called the Pyriphlegethon, and its lava streams throw off fragments of it in various parts of the earth. Opposite it, the fourth river issues forth, which is called the Stygian, and it is said to flow first into a terrible and wild region, all of it blue-gray in color, and the lake that this river forms by flowing into it is called the Styx. As its waters fall into the lake, they acquire dread powers. Then, diving below and winding round it, flows in the opposite direction from the Pyriphlegethon and into the opposite side of the Acherusian lake. Its waters do not mingle with any other. It too flows in a circle and into Tartarus, opposite the Pyriphlegethon. The name of that fourth river, the poets tell us, is Cocytus. Cocytus. I'm ready for this to be done. I'm not going to lie. But we've got a little over 3 pages left. No, a little over 4 pages left. Such is the nature of these things. When the dead arrive at the place to which each has been led by his guardian spirit, they are first judged as to whether they have led a good and pious life. Those who have lived an average life make their way to the Acheron and embark upon such vessels as there are for them, and proceed to the lake. There they dwell and are purified by penalties for any wrongdoing they may have committed. They are also suitably rewarded for their good deeds, as each deserves. Those who are deemed incurable because of the enormity of their crimes, having committed many great sacrileges, or wicked and unlawful murders, and other such wrongs, their fitting fate is to be hurled into Tartarus, never to emerge from it. Those who are deemed to have committed great but curable crimes, such as doing violence to their father or mother in a fit of temper, but who have felt remorse for the rest of their lives, or who have killed someone in a similar manner, these must of necessity be thrown into Tartarus, but a year later the current throws them out. Those who are guilty of murder by way of Cocytus, and those who have done violence to their parents by way of the Pyriphlegethon, after they have been carried along to the Acherusian lake, they cry out and shout. Some of those they have killed, others for those some for those they have killed, others for those they have maltreated, and calling them, they then pray to them and beg them to allow them to step out into the lake and to receive them. If they persuade them, they do step out, and their punishment comes to an end. If they do not, they are taken back into Tartarus, and from there into the rivers, and this does not stop until they have persuaded those they have wronged, for this is the punishment which the judges imposed on them. Yeah, okay. Those are deemed to have lived an extremely pious life are freed and released from the regions of the earth as from a prison. They make their way up to a pure dwelling place and live on the surface of the earth. Those who have purified themselves sufficiently by philosophy live in the future altogether without a body. They make their way to even more beautiful dwelling places, which it is hard to describe clearly, nor do we now have the time to do so. Because of the things we have enunciated, Simmias, one must make every effort to share in virtue and wisdom in one's life, for the reward is beautiful and the hope is great. No sensible man would insist that these things are as I have described them, but I think it is fitting for a man to risk the belief, for the risk is a noble one, that this, or something like this, is true about our souls and their dwelling places, since the soul is evidently immortal, and a man should repeat this to himself as if it were an incantation, which is why I have been prolonging my tale. That is the reason why a man should be of good cheer about his own soul. If during life he has ignored the pleasure of the body and its ornamentation as of no concern to him, and doing him more harm than good, but has seriously concerned himself with the pleasures of learning, and adorned his soul not with alien, but with its own ornaments, namely moderation, righteousness, courage, freedom, and truth, and in that state awaits his journey to the underworld. Now you, Simmias, Cebes, and the rest of you, Socrates continued, will each take that journey at some other time, but my fated day calls me now, as a tragic character might say, and it is about time for me to have my bath, for I think it better to have it before I drink the poison, and save the women the trouble of washing the corpse. When Socrates had said this, Crito spoke. Very well, Socrates. The, what are your instructions to me and the others about your children or anything else? What can we do that would please you most? Nothing new, Crito said Socrates, but what I am always saying, that you will please me and mine and yourselves by taking good care of your own selves in whatever you do, even if you do not agree with me now. But if you neglect your own selves and are unwilling to live following the tracks, as it were, of what we have said now and on previous occasions, you will achieve nothing even if you strongly agree with me at this moment. We shall be eager to follow your advice, said Crito, but how shall we bury you? In any way you like, said Socrates, if you can catch me and I do not escape you. And laughing quietly, looking at us, he said, I do not convince Crito that I am this Socrates talking to you here and ordering all I say, but he thinks that I am the thing which he will soon be looking at as a corpse, and so he asks how he shall bury me. I have been saying for some time and at some length that after I have drunk the poison, I shall no longer be with you, but will leave you to go and enjoy some good fortunes of the blessed. But it seems that I have said all this to him in vain in an attempt to reassure you and myself too. Give a pledge to Crito on my behalf, he said, the opposite pledge to that which he gave the jury. He pledged that I would stay. You must pledge that I will not stay after I die, but that I shall go away, so that Crito will bear it more easily when he sees my body being burned or buried, and will not be angry on my behalf, as if I were suffering terribly, and so that he should not say at the funeral that he is laying out, or carrying out, or burying Socrates. For know you well, my dear Crito, that to express oneself badly is not only faulty as far as the language goes, but does some harm to the soul. You must be of good cheer, and say you are burying my body, and bury it in any way you like and think most customary. After saying this, he got up and went to another room to take his bath, and Crito followed him and told us to wait for him. So we stayed, talking among ourselves, questioning what had been said, and then again talking of the great misfortune that had befallen us. We all felt as if we had lost a father and would be orphaned for the rest of our lives. When he had washed, his children were brought to him. Two of his sons were small, and one was older, and the women of his household came to him. He spoke to them before Crito and gave them what instructions he wanted. Then he sent the women and children away, and he himself joined us. It was now close to sunset, for he had stayed inside for some time. He came and sat down after his bath and conversed for a short while, when the officer of the 11 came and stood by him and said, I shall not reproach you as I do the others, Socrates. They are angry with me and curse me when, obeying the orders of my superiors, I tell them to drink the poison. During the time you have been here, I have come to know you in other ways as the noblest, the gentlest, and the best man who has ever come here. So now, too, I know that you will not make trouble for me. You know who is responsible, and you will direct your anger against them. You know what message I bring. Fare you well, and try to endure what you must as easily as possible. The officer was weeping as he turned away and went out. Socrates looked up at him and said, Fare you well also. We shall do as you bid us. And turning to us, he said, How pleasant the man is. During the whole time I have been here, he has come in and conversed with me from time to time, a most agreeable man, and how genuinely he now weeps for me. Come, Crito, let us obey him. Let someone bring the poison if it is ready. If not, let the man prepare it. But Socrates said, Crito, I think the sun still shines upon the hills and is not yet set. I know that others drink the poison quite a long time after they have received the order, eating and drinking quite a bit, and some of them enjoy intimacy with their loved ones. Do not hurry, there is still some time. It is natural, Crito, for them to do so, said Socrates, for they think they derive some benefit from doing this, but it is not fitting for me. I did not expect any benefit from drinking the poisons a little later, except to become ridiculous in my own eyes for clinging to life, and be sparing of it when there is none left. So do as I ask, and do not refuse me. Hearing this, Crito nodded to the slave who was standing near him. The slave went out, and after a time came back with the man who was to administer the poison, carrying it made ready in a cup. When Socrates saw him, he said, Well, my good man, you are an expert in this. What must one do? Just drink it and walk around until your legs feel heavy, and then lie down and it will act of itself. And he offered the cup to Socrates, who took it quite cheerfully. Echecrates, without a tremor or any change of feature or color, but looking at the man from under his eyebrows, as was his wont, asked, What do you say about pouring a libation from this drink? It is allowed? We only mix as much as we believe will suffice, said the man. I understand, Socrates said, but one is allowed, indeed one must, utter a prayer to the gods that the journey from here to yonder may be fortunate. This is my prayer, and may it be so. And while he was saying this, he was holding the cup, and then drained it calmly and easily. Most of us had been able to hold back our tears reasonably well up till then, but when we saw him drinking it, and after he drank it, we could hold them back no longer. My own tears came in floods against my will, so I covered my face. I was weeping for myself, not for him, for my misfortune in being deprived of such a comrade. Even before him, Crito was unable to restrain his tears and got up. Apollodorus had not ceased from weeping before, and at this moment his noisy tears and anger made everybody present break down, except Socrates. What is this? He said. You strange fellows, it is mainly for this reason that I sent the women away, to avoid such unseemliness, for I am told one should die in good omened silence. So keep quiet and control yourselves. His words made us ashamed, and we checked our tears. He walked around, and when he said his legs were heavy, he lay on his back, as he had been told to do. And the man who had given him the poison touched his body, and after a while tested his feet and legs, pressed hard upon his foot, and asked him if he felt this. And Socrates said no. Then he pressed his calves, and made his way up his body, and showed us that it was cold and stiff. He felt it himself, and said that when the cold reached his heart, he would be gone. As his belly was getting cold, Socrates uncovered his head. He had covered it, and said these were his last words. Crito, we owe a cock to Asclepius. Make this offering to him, and do not forget. It shall be done, said Crito. Tell us if there is anything else. But there was no answer. Shortly afterwards, Socrates made a movement. The man uncovered him, and his eyes were fixed. Seeing this, Crito closed his mouth and his eyes. Such was the end of our comrade, Echecrates. I don't know why I suddenly forgot how to say that. A man who we would say was, of all those we have known, the best, and also the wisest and the most upright. Whew. And that is the end of Phaedo. I can say I liked Euthyphro. I enjoyed Euthyphro more than I did Phaedo. I am not going to read the other 3 of the 5 dialogues yet. Like I was saying on one of the breaks, I really am not feeling like this is great material for streaming. If I was discussing it with somebody maybe, but just reading it, it just doesn't feel like good streaming material. So I'm not sure how much more philosophy I'll be doing, but I won't be doing any more for now. I am going to decide on a new book to start between now and Tuesday. So I don't feel like rating. I just haven't felt like rating at all this week. So I'm just going to call it there, and I will see you all in the next reading, which should be Monday, Star Wars. See you then.
Shattered skies, watching teary blue eyes, wonder where I might find some peace of mind. Not lights like I've had, but more sophisticated into love relations. I'm disassembling my own heart, 'cause my mind's a million places and giving up. So it's in my head. So tell me it's not happening. Tell me it's not happening. So sophisticated into love relations.